here today then, people of the state of Michigan and Carolyn Newsome. Ma'am, are you Carolyn Newsome?
Yes, I am.
You're here today with Ms. Benedict Notter, your attorney. And we have Ms. Sorcy on behalf of the people. We have today scheduled for a preliminary examination in this matter, one count of animal cruelty, over 10 animals. With that, Ms. Sorcy, how would the people like to proceed at this time?
Your Honor, an offer has been extended in exchange for forfeiture of 19 animals to the Kent County Animal Shelter. The defendant is going to waive for an offer of 1-for-1 with a felony that has been charged in Manistee County.
All right, and the felony in Manistee County is the same style of charge, is that correct?
It is the same charge, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, Ms. Benedict Notter, in your discussions with your client here today, is that the plan moving forward?
It is, Your Honor. It is her intention to waive. I just want to note for my client's benefit and put on the record, obviously statutorily, even with a consent forfeiture, she still is entitled to that 72-hour redemption period. I'm not sure whether or not that's feasible for her, but she just wanted that noted on the record.
All right, thank you very much. And, all right, Ms. Sorcy, any, I guess, response in terms of the 72-hour redemption period?
I believe, Your Honor, that somebody from animal control is here who's able to give the court a figure. That redemption period only applies if the court places a monetary amount on what the defendant would have to come up with in order to reclaim those animals. Okay, the agreement is that she would forfeit the dogs right now, which does not include the 72-hour redemption window.
All right. Ms. Benedict Notter, is that your understanding as well?
Your Honor, I think that I want to be careful because I think in reality, the likelihood of redemption is quite low. But I do want to note that I don't think that even if the parties were to make an agreement regarding redemption, this court can't modify the statutory right that there is by law in the state of Michigan a 72-hour redemption period. Now, we would stipulate to the number that's been presented by the people of $11,000. So we don't have to put proofs on as it relates to that, but I don't believe that plea negotiations can abrogate the legislator created 72-hour period. So I don't agree that it is a part of the plea agreement or waiver agreement, and I just want that noted.
All right, thank you very much. I would say this, no matter what is in statute, any legislation, by stipulation of the parties, anything could be removed or agreed to not apply, but it sounds like there is not an agreement here as to the 72-hour redemption period, but there is an agreement as to the dollar amount. Ms. Sorcy, any issue with that being the style of moving forward?
No, Your Honor, I want to clarify my understanding of the statute. If the defendant signs over paperwork and agrees to forfeit dogs under that statute, or any animal, under that statute, there is no 72-hour period. If the court holds a forfeiture hearing and states that those animals are to be forfeited, then that bond amount is set at $11,000 or some figure, and the defendant would have 72 hours to post that bond.
Okay.
So I think that there is just that clarification.
So the people's position is by way of agreeing to not conduct the hearing, that there is no 72-hour redemption period for the defendant.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we would like those the forfeiture paperwork to be signed today.
Okay.
Your Honor, I don't, is there a potential, if the court would allow, for me to speak with Ms. Newsome briefly just in the hallway? I just want to make sure she understands.
Absolutely. We might have to put you back in the room. I'm not sure. That'll be kind of up to the deputy and the officer if we can have you two talk, but I'm understanding that you want to have at least a private space to do that. We'll make sure we have it. All right, we can go on to the record now. here today. Again, people of the state of Michigan and Carolyn Newsome. All parties are present back in the courtroom here today. Ms. Benedict Notter, how would you like to move forward?
Thank you, Your Honor. In speaking with Ms. Newsome, I know the court knows that this is obviously a really emotional and difficult issue. But in further communication with Ms. Newsome, she does still wish to proceed even with the prosecutor's position, which in rereading the statute, I do believe is accurate, that if it's not a finding of the court, but it's a waiver, that 72-hour doesn't apply, and she's still willing to move forward with the waiver.
All right, understood. Thank you very much. Well, let's begin with the criminal matter then. As to the charge of animal cruelty, 10 to 25 animals, there is before the court pre-exam conference form signed by all parties, including the defendant here. And it states further negotiations in circuit court. If defendant enters a plea in the Manistee County animal abuse case, there would be a dismissal of this file, or vice versa, i.e. there would be a plea here and a dismissal of the Manistee County case. Ms. Sorcy, is that a complete understanding of the offer from the people here today?
It is, Your Honor, with the addition that has already been discussed, a forfeiture of 19 dogs.
Understood. All right. And to make sure we're all on the same page then, Ms. Benedict Notter, is that your complete understanding as well?
It is, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Newsome, I want you to understand, ma'am, you have the right to a preliminary examination in this courtroom here today, at which the people would have to prove two things to this court. Probable cause a felony was committed and probable cause that you committed that felony. Do you understand this today, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
By waiving the exam, the offer that was placed on the record and then further stated with the forfeiture, but for the core of it, the offer that was on this pre-exam conference form is preserved at least to the first status conference in circuit court. Do you understand that as well?
Can you explain that, Your Honor?
Sure. So the offer that you, for lack of a better term, lock in today, that is on the table today, has to be held open at least to the first status conference in circuit court. Circuit court is where a felony case would be tried or a plea would be entered. So that's the next stage of court that you go to, from district to downtown in Grand Rapids for circuit court at the 17th Circuit Court. Does this make sense to you, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So do you understand that at least to that first status conference, your offer will remain open?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. With that, the court is in receipt of the pre-exam conference form. Furthermore, an examination waiver signed by Ms. Benedict Notter, her client here today. Court is adding in the date for the bind over, signing the same, finding a knowing, intelligent, voluntary waiver of the right to an examination. Finally, Ms. Newsome, I'm in receipt of a waiver of circuit court arraignment that saves you a trip downtown. It means a not guilty plea is entered as your case proceeds forward in circuit court. With that, we move then to the civil forfeiture aspect of this, and I believe there is an agreement. Correct me where I'm wrong, Ms. Sorcy, but the agreement is for the immediate forfeiture or the continued forfeiture with animal control of the 19 animals as tied to this file. Is that correct here today?
Your Honor, that's my fault for using the word forfeiture. The agreement is for the surrender, the voluntary surrender of the dogs, and the people will have no reason to proceed with forfeiture.
Understood. All right. So we'll say synonyms aside, the surrender of the 19 animals, correct?
Correct.
All right. And Ms. Benedict Notter, is that your understanding as well here today?
Yes, Your Honor. I will note my understanding, because it is a civil proceeding, I don't represent Ms. Newsome on that specifically, so I think it would be appropriate for Ms. Newsome to answer that question, but that is my understanding.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ms. Newsome, you are agreeing here today to the surrendering of those 19 animals to the care and custody of animal control in Kent County during the pendency of this case. Is that correct?
Am I recalling, Your Honor?
All right. Ms. Sorcy, anything further that you wish placed on the record regarding that surrendering?
No, well, Your Honor, the way that, I just want to ensure that the defendant fully understands it's not during the pendency of this here, or the court case. It is a permanent surrender
Oh,
of the
okay.
19 dogs.
All right, so we're a little bit outside of the statute then, as that's sort of for the pendency in the matter before it gets to a circuit court trial. So we're discussing the permanent surrendering of the 19 animals.
That's correct.
All right. And Ms. Newsome, you agree to that, the permanent surrendering of those 19 animals with Kent County?
Yeah, I didn't know it was permanent, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And I will just clarify for the court, a forfeiture hearing after the 72 hours, they are also forfeited to the county permanently. It is not for the pendency of any sort of criminal matter. The reason that we are allowed to do that is to save animals from being held in limbo for the duration of any sort of criminal.
Understood. All right. With that, Ms. Newsome, are you agreeing here today to the permanent surrendering of the 19 animals?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. With that placed on the record as well, no hearing is necessary under that statute. The case is waived to circuit court for further proceedings on the felony charge. Ms. Sorcy, on behalf of the people then here today, anything further?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. And Ms. Benedict-Natter, as to the criminal matter, anything further for you?
We would seek to address our pretrial release, Your Honor.
You may do so.
Your Honor, I know that we addressed bond at the last hearing, and I do wish to address it again. She's being held on a $5,000 cash or surety bond. Your Honor, she has no criminal history, and she's certainly not an old woman, but she's not a young woman, Your Honor. And the allegations here, I know are serious, and I know they're concerning, but she's not somebody who has ever harmed anyone in our community. These aren't assaultive charges, and even to the extent that these charges could involve the assault of an animal, the allegations made by the people in this case do not involve that. If taken to be true by this court, the people have alleged that my client had 17 to 19 dogs in a car, and that while there was a bag of food in the car, they didn't believe there to be adequate water, and that those animals were seen by veterinarians after the fact, and that none of the veterinarian reports that I have received in the course of initial disclosures note any ailments or malnourishment or lasting medical harm to these animals. And I can tell you that Ms. Newsome is somebody who loves her animals. But I understand the allegations made by the people, and I understand their severity. But I don't believe that the allegations here warrant Ms. Newsome remaining in custody now, likely for another 6, depending on the circuit court judge assignment, 10 weeks before she has her next hearing. And she is indigent, and she has a public defender. She does not have the means to post this bond, Your Honor. She was not on bond at the time of this offense. She's entitled to a personal recognizance bond under the presumption in our state. Her guidelines, if she were taken to trial and convicted, are 0 to 3 months, which presume a community-based sanction. And I believe that at this point, she's already served a third of her guidelines range. And so what we're facing is the idea that Ms. Newsome is being, prior to even a conviction or finding of guilt, exposed to a worse penalty than somebody who committed the same acts who had financial means would be. And somebody who had greater financial means than her would be able to remain out in the community the entirety of the pendency of their case and be convicted, while Ms. Newsome may, if she remains in custody and chooses to exercise her right to a trial, remain in custody for over a year. And I would ask that the court consider her guidelines range, consider the presumption of a personal recognizance bond, consider the allegations in this case, which do not involve any type of physical abuse of animals, not to underscore their severity, but to say that I believe Ms. Newsome is somebody who does deserve to obtain her own pretrial release. And I think every objective indicator that our criminal justice system has says that she is entitled to that. I would also note that she does have a case in Manistee County, as the court obviously is aware given the resolution here. Her attorney on that case, Mr. Eric O'Hearn, did reach out to me today. It is critical that she be able to be out of custody to facilitate preparation of her defense if she does choose to exercise her right to trial, to obtain things like veterinary records, to obtain things like witness statements through here and Manistee County. It's critical that she be able to be out, to have access to things like her medical records, veterinary records, financial records, her cell phone. And so I would ask that this court consider releasing her on a recognizance, which is the presumed outcome of this case.
Understood. Thank you. Ms. Benedict-Natter, you might have more information than I do at this point in time. What is the bond that's been set in Manistee?
Your Honor, I don't know the actual bond amount, but what I can indicate from my review of Access Kent is that there was a detainer placed on her for Manistee County where she would have been transferred. So I do believe that she will have to go and address it with Manistee County Circuit Court. That matter has been bound over, but I think that Kent County exceeds the pickup radius. So I know that she will have to address that, and I believe that she will in speaking with her and her attorney, but I don't know the exact monetary amount of that bond.
Okay. All right.
Your Honor, if I may, she's posted the 25 up in Manistee, so she'll be free on that.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, with that, Ms. Sorcy, any response from the people concerning the request for a bond reduction today?
Your Honor, I would just like to place on the record the same concerns about housing and the defendant posing a flight risk. I know that at some point during the contact with Manistee and Kent County, she had left to go back to Georgia. And I don't believe that there is a residence here that she was residing in. And other than that, the people leave it to the court's discretion.
Okay. The issue that we had originally was the Georgia license, and at least still prevalent on my mind at this point in time in terms of a flight risk. And Ms. Benedict, now you're absolutely correct in the presumption for a recognizance release. But the two factors to consider are flight risk to the public was the issued Georgia-based driver's license from July of 2024. The ties to Kent County are pretty minimal, or at least the ties to Michigan seem to be pretty minimal at this point in time. You're right, the charges are serious, but I do not disagree, or I'll take you at your word in terms of the 0 to 3 guidelines. That's probably where I would roughly in my head score something like this with no prior criminal history. What I'm willing to do here today then is kind of meet in the middle, understanding there's a manistee charge that's of a similar nature. What I'm going to do then is leave the amount in place but modify the style of bond. Can be posted by a 10% cash posting. That would be a $500 cash necessary to be posted. I understand your client's indigency. However, if the factors that need to be considered are flight risk to the public, I do feel that that is mitigated at least by a $500 posting. That's where we're going to leave it at. No alcohol, no drugs, reporting to court services, and you may not be in possession of any animals if you are released on that bond. Do you understand that today, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. With that, Ms. Benedict Notter, anything further on behalf of Ms. Newsome today?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Sorcy, anything further for the people?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. We are in recess at this time.